it's also not fair. Like, we have these images given to us where it's pretty much saying healthy equals this, and the image of the man with the six pack on, Men's Fitness. And it's like, honestly, you could take that exact model who represents the, physique of a desired, successful, powerful man in today's society and ask him, how do you feel about your body? And I guarantee you he has insecurities.
You're listening to Inside Acting, a podcast dedicated to demystifying the inner and outer game of success in the entertainment industry. I'm back, your co-hostess with the mostest, AJ Meyer.
And I'm still here, Trevor Algott. And coming up in episode 256, I sit down for part 2 of my chat with eating psychology coach, wellness advocate, and spoken word poet, Tessie Tracy. In part 2, we dive deeper down the rabbit hole of eating psychology and body image, and we share our own histories with food and fitness. I get a little vulnerable in this one. And Tessie also shares the first 4 steps of her 7-step process for identifying, connecting with, and ultimately overcoming self-love obstacles. The relationship we have with that person in the mirror, especially when it comes to what we feed that person and what we think of that person's body. So that and more coming up in episode 256. Stay with us.
Support for this episode of Inside Acting comes from Rehearsal Pro, the next version of Rehearsal, the essential app for actors. It's now available in the iTunes App Store if you haven't downloaded it yet. If you want to learn your lines, be off book for your auditions, explore your character, and make stronger choices, and do a whole lot more, like get off book for those last-minute auditions especially, I can tell you from personal experience, go to rehearsal.pro/IAP right now to learn about all the great new features in the newest version of Rehearsal, the groundbreaking app designed by actors for actors. That's rehearsal.pro/IAP.
So AJ, it is good to have you back, my brother. How are you?
I appreciate that, man. Thank you. It is good to be back. I missed you. I missed the podcast. I missed our listeners. And had an unexpected blow to my personal identity is the best way I can think to describe it. So yeah, it's great to be back here with you.
Well, I know I speak for all the listeners when I say it's very nice to hear your voice again on the show. Let's roll into this episode, shall we?
Yeah, dude.
So you had a Young and Restless audition as well as another audition for Blacklist?
Yeah, I went back again for Young and the Restless. Didn't happen this time, and then I got another audition for another taping appointment for the Blacklist, because being that it's in New York. And it's so funny because both Jasmine and Ben Whitehair, who helped me put it on tape, said the exact same thing. They were like, "That office loves you. Congratulations."
Yeah, it's getting a little funny. I mean, this is what, the 3rd or 4th on tape audition in the past 2 months?
Yeah, in the past 2 months, but then like over the course of I've auditioned for that show probably close to a dozen times, 10.
They're
times.
They're working really hard to get you on there.
Yeah, and I like I made this joke the last time this happened, but we name the files and folders on when we edit them. It's gotten such a easy workflow, a well-oiled machine over at Ben's, that we just drop the files onto his computer, and I end up uploading from his computer to my Vimeo account. Like we just do it on the spot,
Yeah.
And so on his computer, there are these folders with the video files in them. And so it's a Blacklist not only has its own folder, now it has its own season folders and then its own episode folders. So it's like man. 405, 406, 411,
Yeah.
I can like track the episodes. So anyway,
successful person problems.
Hashtag successful person problems. But yeah, I don't know what the big lesson there is, other than to say, like, you know, it's working. You know, I've clearly booked certain offices. They're just trying to, you know, get me in. It's already happened with the NCIS office, obviously, because I had gone in the same thing. You know, I'd gone into that office probably a dozen times, gotten called back, you know, a handful of times, and gone to producers. So they all knew me. And when I walked into that room for the one that I booked, it was the same thing. It was like, hi, it's me again. I know all of you people. I've seen you before, blah, blah, blah. You know, so it's just, it is the way that it happens. And there are sometimes just long stretches of time where either nothing at all is happening, or you just feel like you're getting really close and it doesn't, you know. Ben and I were talking about it last night when we were doing the blacklist thing. He said, I've gotten, for one of the first times in my career, I'm actually getting mildly frustrated at the close but no cigar thing, which is like a great problem to have. Any actor would love to be in, you know, a top choice for any role that they were going out for. And it's just happened so much, so often for him and for me as well, that like he's actually starting to get like a little, he's like, man, I would really love to turn these, like, oh, you were so close, into an actual to an actual booking. And, you know, I get it, but it you know, we both were like, it will happen. It's just a matter of time.
Yeah, I'm willing to bet that every actor who's a series regular, or, you know, working consistently in film and television or on stage, I guarantee if you ask them, they've all had a phase like that in their life where they were just like, is this going to happen or not? Like, stop teasing me.
Stop teasing
Stop teasing me. It probably doesn't feel like major, like, success and strides, but it certainly looks like that from the outside.
You know, sometimes it does feel like major successes and strides, like when you book something, or when you get called back into an office that you know is looking for something for you. Anyway. Yeah.
Cool, man. Well, we've got some great questions queued up for this episode as well, and I think we should kick it off with this voicemail from Katie.
Hey, dudes. So I was just listening to Steve Laura's podcast, and they were talking about using gesture as a way to remember to move when you're talking. And I was thinking how that would sound like total garbage to me as an actor if I didn't know that it totally works. So there's a technique called punctuation walks, where as you're memorizing your lines, you also memorize gestures that go with the punctuation of the speech. And you don't actually do those gestures when you perform the role, but because as you're learning the lines, you're memorizing these huge gestures, it informs the work in the same way. I think that what Steve was talking about might inform public speaking or acting in general. Anyway, just wanted to back that up for anybody who, like me, thought that sounded like kind of bullshit advice until they realized it wasn't. All right, love the podcast. You guys are awesome.
So yeah, less of a question, more of a comment, and punctuation walks is what she calls it. And actually it brings to mind something that I remember reading about in a great book called How to Stop Acting by Harold Guskin. Great book. And he talks about working with, you know, some pretty big names on set, coaching them through stuff. And he is a huge advocate for, you know, physicalizing things almost like too big, like getting them out of your head and into your body, but in like a 300% or 3,000% kind of way, which kind of connects you to it a little bit more deeply. And then when you step into the actual scene or the actual, you know, filming or whatever it is, you can kind of use that to more directly focus your intentions. The book did not, I'm actually looking at it right now. Looks like at Barnes & Noble, it only got a 2.3 out of 5 rating, but on Goodreads, it's got a 4.1 out of 5. And I loved the book. I thought it was fantastic. Definitely recommended reading for any actor. But punctuation walks, that's another term for this idea.
I wonder if that's from a book or if it's from a particular like acting teacher or coach that she had. But really interesting, and I'm glad it resonated with people. That was sort of the point of that whole series, right? We were like, there's applications of this public speaking thing to acting, and we wanted to sort of highlight those, and it worked apparently for one person.
Yeah, Katie, thank you so much for that input, man. That's really cool. And I love that approach to acting. I've always been very connected to the physical aspect of acting. A lot of actors, I think, stay stuck in their head or in their heart when they're exploring roles. And I've always found not only is that my sort of go-to, but that, which is not a good thing for me, but when I step outside of it and make it physical, it's like everything just blossoms. So love that. Hopefully a lot of people listening are implementing that in their practice. Quick shout out to vo2gogo.com, the award-winning voiceover training system and winner of Backstage's Reader's Choice Award for Best Voiceover Training 4 years in a row. You guys can visit them online at vo2gogo.com/start and get access at that link to a free Getting Started in Voiceover online class that'll help you add voiceover to your acting portfolio. And it's really pretty much designed for anybody and everybody who is in any way, shape, or form VO curious. So don't be intimidated. Check it out. vo2gogo.com/start and thank us later. And then come visit me in Hollywood at one of my monthly classes.
Grace Gordon, who recently also made a super generous donation to the podcast, wrote in with a response to, I think it was one of your picks of the week, right, Trev?
Yeah, it was a book called Freedom by Jonathan Franzen that I loved.
And yeah, she wrote some interesting stuff. I actually clicked on some of the links in the email and read some of these articles, and I was like, whoa, this rabbit hole is pretty deep. Do you want to talk about this, since you know the sort of references she's making, and since it was a response to one of your picks of the week?
Yeah, totally. And this is, part of a larger conversation that we've sort of been having on the podcast off and on for a few years now. But, well, first of all, Grace is a sort of fellow book nerd. Bookworm. So, Grace, I'm giving you a virtual fist bump right now. Book nerds unite. And she's very familiar with a lot of literature. In fact, she has a podcast, which I believe is called the Book John podcast. And I love that because people who grew up on the East Coast should recognize the term John, Jawn. I don't know where it came from, but it's basically a word that was kind of like used like maybe 10 or 15 years ago a lot to just describe like a thing. So like, hey man, hand me that John over there. Like that was, I don't know, it's a Philly thing. It's not really a thing anymore, but it was for a long time. Anyway,
when you Google it, it literally says plural, Johns, slang, chiefly Philadelphia.
Yeah, exactly.
And then the definition, something, any object, place, or thing.
Yep, that's it. Oh man, those were the good old days. So check out her podcast, the Book John podcast, or maybe it's just a Book John podcast. I'll be responsible and look it up and put it in the show notes so you can check it out directly. So check our show notes for a link directly to that, to her project. But yeah, essentially she says, Jonathan Franzen's a great writer, but he's kind of an asshole. And she just kind of wanted to bring up this conversation. He's got a miserable reputation, she says, in the literary community, despite being an award-winning and admired writer. So she feels strongly about this, but she made a point not to go into that. She just kind of linked to some stuff online where Jay Franz, as he's known as in the literary communities, how he shunned Oprah when she picked The Corrections, which was his first like major success. When she picked that for a book club, he kind of blew her off and said he isn't that kind of writer. And he also said he wanted to adopt an Iraqi war orphan after 9/11 because he doesn't think millennials are angry enough. He's also pretty outspoken about climate change and the species extinction and things like that. But he is outspoken in such a way that I think it alienates a lot of people. And I've, dug into a lot of this stuff. And I don't know. I mean, I can see how that would color somebody's perception of an artist's work. She also cites Orson Scott Card, who wrote Ender's Game and a bunch of sci-fi books like that. Yeah. Ender's Game is like a classic in the sci-fi world. But apparently, and I didn't know this, but apparently Orson Scott Card is a super right-wing homophobe and racist. So this whole kind of conversation is really about how, if, can you separate an artist's work from their personal views? And this comes up for me all the time. I feel really strongly about climate change and animal rights, and I have to sort of check myself almost every day to not like get out and be a major like radical activist with animal rights on the internet. I've tried it a few times and it's not received well. It is not. People hate that shit. But at the same time, it's like, how can I just stand by when this is a big, huge part of who I am? So I get it. And I think it's interesting that it's on all levels. You can be a uber successful author, writer, artist, and still have this kind of almost like publicly arrived at censorship. I don't know. Do you have anything you wanted to sort of share about this, or maybe a way forward?
Yeah, I actually didn't think about the perspective that you just brought up about feeling like one of those people. I didn't even think about that. I didn't even think that was a part of, something you were experiencing. I was more thinking about it as, okay, a consumer of art, or a person in this conversation, and all the challenging questions that brings up.
Yeah, I actually,
really interesting.
Yeah, I've shared a few things online, because when I see footage of what happens at factory farms, and even farms that are supposedly kosher and whatnot, and I see the carnage and the misery and the animals just being tortured senselessly. It's just, I get so worked up. And I brought this up with our masterminds group, and they were pretty blunt with me that it's a real turnoff to speak up about that kind of thing. And it's interesting because I don't see it that way. I see it as a service, to be completely honest. And part of the reason that I am sort of on this journey right now with this particular issue is, number one, well, anyway, I'm on this journey because somebody posted something like that I came across, and that is what brought my awareness around to it in a new way. And I'm so grateful that person had the guts and the temerity to post something that was clearly an awful thing to put on the internet, that clearly would get them a lot of sort of hate mail and abuse and trolls and so
it was really effective for you.
For me, yeah.
And so you feel like, I totally get it.
Maybe it just comes down to just not giving a shit what people think and standing up for what you believe in. But how does that affect a career?
I want to sort of come back to the because there's almost like two different ways of looking at this, because I think what Grace's question is because she says something about boycotting. Would you ever boycott an artist because of a crime, a lifestyle, an attitude that they possess? And is there a middle ground? And, I don't see, for me, there is a line. It's blurry and probably very wide, but to me, there's a line between advocacy and hate. You can advocate like crazy for animal rights, but where I'm going to draw the line is if you post something in favor of the KKK or something, which people do. And to them, that is advocacy, right? Mm-hmm. That is what they are advocating. They are advocating white supremacy or white nationalism, which is happening across the globe right now with Brexit and Trump, et cetera, right? That is some people's advocacy. They are literally advocating for that, just like you're advocating for climate change and animal rights. And you and I probably don't see those two things as the same, but in this conversation, maybe they are, maybe they aren't. To me, they're not. I'm like, that's insane. But the artists that come up for me right now are Mel Gibson, Bill Cosby, Michael Jackson, right? So Mel Gibson, personally, I have actually personally boycotted him after finding out what a terrible anti-Semite he is. I will not go to any of his movies. I do not support anything that he does, right? After all this stuff, it started coming out about, Michael Jackson and Bill Cosby. It was very difficult. I grew up listening to Bill Cosby, watching his Disney stand-up specials and listening to his old albums that I actually own on vinyl. I mean, like, I grew up on that. And so part of it has been, and same thing with Michael Jackson, like his music was huge for me growing up. So part of it has been actually trying to separate the art from the artist, which is another part of, Grace's question. But as far as boycotting them, like, I don't know, it's like where there is sort of there's a lot of gray area. And I think it just has to do with a person's, like, what your personal, moral compass is, and it's tough. I don't think there's a straightforward answer. I think the answer is going to be different for everyone, but it sure as hell is an interesting time to be having this conversation, considering we're a week away from this very contentious election. Yeah. That is way too close for comfort. Like, just super scary that a good 48% of the country are about to vote for a racist, sexist, bigoted, climate denier, insane, unintelligent gas bag. Is like unreal to me. But
tell me what you really feel, though. Like, don't sugarcoat it.
Okay, I won't. But we get there's also this, like, reaching out to those people too, that must feel so disenfranchised, like, in order to be able to make that kind of choice. I don't know what's going on in their heads, but I love them, and I want to reach out a hand across to them, and maybe that's the answer. Maybe rather than boycotting, it's if you have some kind of personal connection, or if you have some way of, like, reaching across to someone that is either an asshole, or what does she call Orson Scott Card a racist and a homophobe. Maybe there's a way of being a counter advocate, if you will, like, just advocating for love. And that's what I started personally with, like, this election, for instance. I started changing my my approach on social media and stuff, and I just started talking about love and support and like trying to mend fences, if you will, because after on November 9th, no matter who wins, like, it's going to be like it's contentious. It's one of the most contentious elections we've had in modern history, probably the most. And so how do we heal from that as a nation? And I think it has to do with, this conversation. Unless I'm crazy. Am I making stupid connections here?
No, you're making absolute sense. And I am 100% with you on the sort of, like, you can't fight hate with hate, Like, my philosophy, my approach these days is, like, what we focus on expands. That's a law of the universe. It is absolutely true. If I focus on how much debt I've got, I'm going to accrue more debt. But if I consciously steer my consciousness, my awareness to other things, whether they quote unquote exist in the here and now or not, I'm going to create more of that. And so my approach has just been like, look, there's enough hate in the world. There's enough, like, bigotry and racism and all that stuff. I'm not going to feed that anymore. I'm going to actively focus on thinking, speaking, and doing more of what I want to see in the world. I think, the crux of this obviously is, like, I love Ender's Game. I thought it was a great book. I love Jonathan Franzen's work, but, like, do I want to support these artists by buying their work? And that's the tough part. Because I could buy their book and be like, this is a beautiful book. This is a wonderful thing. Everybody should read more. Everybody should check out this book. While I'm sort of inadvertently supporting by, paying a small portion of that person's rent, the continuation of their lifestyle or ideals.
Yeah. And then it goes back to something we talked about a few episodes back, where we were talking about voting with your wallet.
Yeah, exactly.
And it's like, do you want to, like, give them money? That's why I don't
go to the library. Get it for free. They don't get a penny.
That's such a good idea. Yeah. That's so funny. I'd love to hear people's thoughts. I mean, obviously it's a huge conversation. And if we said, hey, everyone who has an opinion or feeling or thought about this, write in or call in, we'd be talking about just this for the rest of forever. But I do sort of want to hear, people's thoughts. And obviously we can't cover, everything that could possibly be covered in this subject. But, if there's something you really feel like we missed, or Grace, if we were completely off base, let us know.
Yeah, I would really love to hear other people's perspectives on this and how they handle it. Because I like I said, I get it. I deal with it a lot, and I know that I don't know, but I feel like I'm missing some crucial piece of the puzzle that somebody else is listening, going like, guys, but guys.
Right,
so
right.
If that's you, call us, email us, write us, leave us a voicemail, let us know, and we'll definitely continue this conversation.
Yeah.
All right. So part 2 of my chat with Tessie Tracy coming at you right now. Enjoy this. We'll catch you on the other side. I want to talk a little bit about body image, because that's really what this all centers around. And that's a huge sort of hot topic in our culture, especially in the entertainment industry, where there's so much pressure to look a certain way, to dress a certain way, to move a certain way, to present yourself a certain way. And that certain way tends to be very narrowly defined as a sort of sex object. I'm generalizing here, but that seems to be the majority of the message that's kind of put out there into the world in our culture. Have you had your own history with body image, kind of internal conversations? And if so, what have those conversations, that history been like? For me,
I first of all agree with you that it's, especially in entertainment, it's a dialogue that is, necessary to learn how to navigate. And although there are what I think are definitely positive body image movements and discussions arising, we still have a ways to go. For me personally, I grew up, I did have someone close to me who went to treatment for eating disorder. And at that time, I had never experienced my own, I ate when I was hungry. I didn't when I wasn't. But I got a close view of wow, that is, it really is like a sickness, and it takes working through, and it's, something to take seriously. I had my own experience with somewhat disordered eating when I had graduated college. I was, in my sports withdrawal because I had been the athlete and had a coach my entire life, and then found myself in, a quarter life crisis. What should I do next? So of course I signed up to do a bodybuilding competition.
There are worse things.
Yeah, there are. So I hired coaches. I worked with them for about 5 months, and I was in the figure category. So what that basically means is my goal was to still have a very feminine figure, but extremely lean, very cut, and you still go on stage and wear the bikini and that whole thing. So I went down the road. The person who I was close to, who had the eating disorder, said, "You're an idiot. Why would you do something like this? After knowing what I've been through?" And I did it anyways because I learned my own lessons. So I got to the point about 3 weeks before this show. I was so carb depleted. I, started out at like 140, already lean and just muscular, and lost 20 pounds. So I was then like on the day of the show, like 119, 9% body fat, had lost my period, was crying every day because I had like no cognitive function and was just an emotional carb deprived wreck. And was like literally telling my friends, please remind me of this moment. Don't ever let me do this again. The day of the show, and I discovered what it's like to go down that path of fearing calories and fearing food. I was scared to have a piece of gum because it had 5 calories. And I would count then on when I went to go run or the elliptical that I made sure to get those 5 calories. Like it was crazy, literally crazy. The day of the show, I didn't want to take my warm-ups off because I felt fat, under my $300 shiny bikini and my 3 layers of spray tan. I won the entire show. So I won out of like the novice category and all the experienced bodybuilders there. And then I had a lot of trouble going off of my diet. So immediately after the show, my coaches had like a family emergency. So they kind of pieced out on me, and I hadn't asked any questions about like, how do I readjust to a normal diet? So my body, because it was in like literal, like biological starvation, I binged on fats and sugars and was eating cookie dough and like got sick from it. And I felt so out of control. And like I saw a therapist and I remember the therapist asked me, she was like, so are you going to do another show? And I remember thinking I remember saying, of course not. And thinking like, oh, but I was good at something but I won, I got the validation, and I got the validation that was judged based only on what I looked like. So following that, I didn't ever do another show, but I still chose to pursue modeling and acting. So I get to Hollywood and I have a typical experience that a lot of other people have. I got a meeting with a print modeling agent, and, now I'm still at a healthy weight. I'm fit. And the modeling agent meets me and she says, have you ever done plus size modeling? And I'm like a size 6.
Right.
And, it's literally my first experience in Hollywood with an agent. So I was like, and I had a commercial agent who told me I needed to either lose 10 or gain 20 to fit into, the pretty girl role or the like a slightly overweight character role. And those sort of things are still going on. But to me, those looking back now, I wish I could have been secure in my own body image to stand up and be like, no, this is who I am. And I wish that I could have gone to auditions, and the first thought in my mind when I didn't get it wasn't, oh, it's because I'm too big. Like I went to a lot of fitness auditions, and at the fitness auditions, some even for jobs I got hired for, just walking around the room, my audition, I had to be in like a sports bra, and my only thought was like, oh, I'm bigger than every single girl here.
Wow.
So to me, it's just, that's part of the reason why I am so passionate about inspiring people to love the body they're in, because that's what translates into how other people receive us.
What was that moment like that you realized this idea I have about needing to be a certain way is not serving me anymore? What was that moment like where you just decided, you know what, done with that, moving on to self-acceptance, I guess?
It's definitely been a continual process. One moment where I would say I was already like most of the way there, but in my training to become a certified eating psychology coach, the founder, Mark David, who is just a pot of flowing wisdom and gold. So going through the training, I'm listening to him going through case studies and talking about body image. And I think like the insight was that you get to a point where it's what really matters. So if I'm spending so much energy on, oh, well, let me do a quick fix before this audition, or let me, do a quick fix if I want to do a photo shoot, a 21-day cleanse, or, take out carbs. And I'm doing it. So I'm doing it with the intent of, I need to lose some weight, or I need to look a certain way, then that's like toxic and it's not serving me. And at the end of the day, it's not sustainable. Even if I lose that weight, 99% of people that go on a weight loss plan gain it back within a year. Mm-hmm. So the aha moment for me was, I'm relaxing around what I'm choosing to eat. And if I happen to have something that is not, the healthiest, I'm not going to freak out about it, because that's actually just going to work against me. So the more we're hating our bodies and hating food, what that actually does, this is a little bit of a tangent, but what that's actually doing is it puts us in a low-level stress response. So seeing food as the enemy, seeing our body as, oh, I hate my body. It's literally like you're saying you hate yourself, puts your body in a stress response, which scientifically ups your cortisol, which has fat stay on your body, and has different other, health concerns. And if you're eating in a stress state, you're actually not optimizing your digestion and assimilating nutrients. So you're actually lowering your metabolism if you're always eating with a negative mindset.
Yeah. We talked a little bit in the past about Brad Pilon's work with Eat, Stop, Eat and the intermittent fasting thing, which is like a big sort of movement right now, but it's actually been around for thousands and thousands of years. But one of the things he stresses in his work is that relationship with food. And he really stresses for everybody to not demonize a specific food group or a specific meal or ingredient or anything like that, because he says that just leads to this really negative relationship with food. And that is the last thing that you want to have. Just learn to teach yourself essentially to eat in moderation. But don't demonize anything, because once you do that just takes you down this, the spiral of, like you just said, making food the enemy. And there's nothing good at the end of that. Yeah.
It's like the same as, I don't like the saying oh, I'm a food addict, because there's no such thing. Just like you said, food's the one thing we have a relationship with that, it's like sleep. That's like saying, oh, I'm addicted to oxygen, or I'm addicted to sleep. It's, it's a necessary thing. And actually, so just in when we're gathered in community, our pleasure receptors go off. When we're dancing, our pleasure receptors are stimulated. During sex, same thing happens when we're eating. There are pleasure receptors that are going off, meaning we're actually anatomically designed physiologically to receive pleasure from our food. So I think instead of making eating wrong, that when we can, and it can be a practice for people. Like I said, I've seen the other side of it where it's oh, well, it's easier said than done. But it's like anything where it's a practice. So, if I could tell anyone who they're well, I'm an emotional eater. It's great, it's there. That's your body trying to tell you something. It's a coping mechanism, right, yeah. And it's okay. So instead of trying to fight it, if you just be present with it and actually just relax into, okay, this is what I'm doing. I'm having this piece of chocolate cake because I'm sad right now. Or for women, because it might be a certain time of the month, that's okay. But if instead of scarf that chocolate cake down with guilt, if I actually, sit down with it, and I do support, okay, maybe choose an organic chocolate cake that's a good high quality. But I have nice, bites, and I'm indulging, and I'm eating it slow, and I'm, savoring every bite. I'm first of all, like I said, I'm going to digest that cake better. I'm going to eat less of it because my pleasure receptors are actually going to go off and tell the brain in my belly to tell the brain in my head, oh, I'm full, I'm satisfied. That's what I needed. And then we'll stop eating.
mindfulness is such a huge part of just eating, of food. You know, like I have definitely caught myself many times, especially recently, emotionally eating, just like stuffing my face just mindlessly because it feels so good, but not making the connection, at least, you know, until of course I make the connection, because once you have that awareness, it's like now you can't unsee it. But, you know, when you catch yourself and you're just like, oh, here's what I'm doing, I'm essentially self-medicating. That can be a really powerful thing. And I think probably the only thing that really works is just bringing awareness to what is actually happening.
It really is. And it's, again, and it's not like it's about making the behavior go away. Like, I mean, I've read studies about really effectively getting people to stop smoking. The first step, they said, don't stop smoking. All I want you to do is just be really present when you're smoking that cigarette. What does it taste like? What is it like? What do your lungs feel like? And like the results were astounding. People, like, because smoking a cigarette was their escape, they were avoiding something else. They were doing it as a distraction, that when they were actually present to that behavior, the act became disgusting to them and they chose to stop just by being present. So I thought that was pretty powerful. And I feel like things sometimes like either binge eating or overeating, emotional eating, the same thing can be the best results, just being present.
Yeah, absolutely. I want to talk to you about body image for men specifically, because I think most of our culture is sort of in touch with the conversation around, you know, women being encouraged by the media and you know, things like that to be a specific way. But there's an equal conversation, I think, that happens with men, in a different way, but equally as powerful, equally as convincing and manipulative. And I will be the first to happily admit that I often fall victim to body image conversations. I have a very specific idea of the way that I want to look. And a lot of it is rooted in the way I feel, you know, the way my clothes fit and the way I feel walking around. But there's a lot of, it's not vanity. And it's not insecurity, but there is a very sort of compulsive behavior that I've noticed I have when it comes to, you know, my reflection. And I also recognize that sometimes it can be unhealthy because oftentimes those feelings are negative, and I'm in good shape. I'm not trying to get rid of a gut or anything, but I think that that's what a lot of the conversation isn't focusing on, is that you can be completely healthy, especially as a man, and still have all these negative feelings about you know, the way that you're perceived, not only by others but by yourself and things like that. So maybe this is an opportunity to transition into the 7 R's of eating psychology that you practice as a intuitive eating. Eating psychology specialist. Yeah.
So, and to touch on what you said with that other side with men, like, I'm super passionate. I actually have a number of clients that are men that I've worked with regarding body image. And there's a couple of things I'll say is that it stems from, like, when you look up the definition of body image under like the National Eating Disorders, they have like actually a really cool like bullet point thing about the expansive definition of body image. So it's like what you believe about your own appearance, including your memories, assumptions, and generalizations, how you feel about your body, your height, your shape, your weight. You know, some of it is like the obvious, how you sense and control your body. So that's a little more like embodiment is what we call how you feel in your body, not just about your body. Mm-hmm. So just some of these things where it's like we don't necessarily understand where it comes from. Like, sure, some of it comes from media. Some of it might come from, just always like the fact that, you know, you've been an athlete, you've always been in shape. And it's like there's a sense of just always wanting to be great.
Yeah. You know what it is? And I'm sorry to cut you off, but like, it's like a lot of people say to me, like, you need to back off, Trevor. Like, not because I'm extreme in any way. I think I'm a pretty good judge of like when I'm going, too far with it. But like a lot of them say like, what do you do? Like, you're done, Trevor. Like, you don't need to work out today. Like, you're in good shape. And for me, it's like, you don't understand. Like, this is part of my self-concept. Like, this is what I do. I am constantly pushing myself because, and this is maybe where it gets a little unhealthy, because I'm never quite content with where I am. And I'm sure you've run into that kind of thing where you have people that are on the complete other side of the spectrum, where a stranger would look at them and say, like, again, like, what are you doing? Like, you're finished, like, mission accomplished. And yet that person is like, I can't get to my ideal. I need to work harder. Yeah.
And that in itself, I think is, it's also not fair. Like, we have these images like given to us where it's pretty much saying healthy equals this, and the image of the man with the six pack on, Men's Fitness. And it's like, honestly, you could take that exact model who represents the, physique of a desired, successful, powerful man in today's society and ask him, how do you feel about your body? And I guarantee you he has insecurities. I guarantee you. And so in a sense, it's about saying it's not, we say this a lot from some of our training, the issue is not the issue, So even like once I have the perfect body, or it could relate to anything, once I've gotten the perfect job, once I've gotten to the perfect size, the answer, or like the rest of the question you need to answer for yourself is, once I get this, then I'll be this. And whatever the second this is for you, for anyone, the practice is to step into that now. So just as an example, once I lose 10 pounds, then I'll be sexy. Once I lose 10 pounds, or once I get fit, then I'll be successful. Then I'll get the job. Then I'll get the guy. Then I'll get the girl. So, or then I'll be, happy. So the second half of it, the practice, is feeling those results, feeling the happy, feeling the sexy, feeling the successful now, no matter what we look like. And what that actually does is it creates the environment for those results to happen. Whether or not we lose the weight, when we're stepping into our happiness, when we're stepping into feeling sexy, feeling confident. And again, it's a practice, it doesn't happen overnight, but when we're stepping into the ultimate result that we want, oftentimes what happens is the weight comes off without us even trying, because we're just creating the environment for it to happen, or the confidence develops without you changing anything else except for practicing feeling confident. So that's what I'll say about that. And that has to do a lot with, so I developed a 7-step process to transforming any challenge we have, specifically with food and body, to this 7-step process. I call it eating into it, spelled like INTUIT. So basically using our own intuition to guide us. And it starts with reveal. So like I said, the issue is not the issue. It's about revealing, like, okay, what is my biggest challenge right now? Is it that I have this unwanted behavior of overeating or of negative body image? So just really getting clear. Sometimes this can be done through like journaling questions, or just kind of sitting quietly and thinking about it, and just getting clear on like, okay, what's like that big challenge that's kind of like unwanted, and I want to transform this behavior. And then the second step is relax. So that just has to do, I talked a little bit about it, literally just the chemistry of relaxation versus stress in the body. So relaxing into, okay, this is where I'm at right now. And with food and body, it's also about, so many of us eat fast So this is about slowing down with food, relaxing when you're eating. And, it does depend on what your challenge is, how you will implement your relaxation. It might have to do with self-care. You're always just pushing, like going, living so fast that you don't even stop to, take time for yourself or nourish yourself or do something that you want to just do for you. And then you go into restore. Restoring is about embracing emotional expression. So that moves into like, hey, what sort of emotions have I been pushing down? Is there any sadness I haven't expressed? Is there any anger? Like, do I need to talk to, someone I haven't forgiven? A lot of that can be like a root cause for certain food and body issues. It might be, maybe a mom or dad or a friend who in the past was the one that was maybe a little controlling or told you weren't pretty or good enough or just pushed you with good intentions. But it caused that, negative body image for you. So restoring is about experiencing those emotions so we can move through them. The next step is redefine. I love this one. This is about defining our own health. So this is great for we're given a gazillion diets, like eat this, no, eat this, no, eat this. And, if you're a girl, skinny and pretty is what's healthy. If you're a guy, built and brawny is what's healthy. And there are actually studies that demonstrate how people that are categorized as obese are healthier than their skinnier counterparts, meaning like go to the doctor and get your blood test done, and they actually have like a longer lifespan.
How does that work?
So it's basically to say that we don't know how much any one person should weigh. So sure, there is a point where if someone is, I would say 75 to 100 pounds, like heavier than maybe what there are certain ranges. So like our BMI or body mass index give us a little bit of a range of how much we should weigh based on our height and what our body composition should be. So there is a point where if that's, way out of range, sure, you might have weight to lose. But there's a documentary called Embrace by Taryn Brumfitt. She actually started the body image movement. And in that documentary on body image, like what she got a huge thing for her was she had a before picture where she did like a bikini show and lost all this weight. And then her after picture is her now at, 170 to 200 pounds, however much she weighs, but she carries it well. And she's like this big, vivacious woman who is healthy. She runs marathons, like all her, levels when she goes to the doctor are A-okay. So we have a skewed interpretation of what's healthy, I think, because of a lot of the images we're shown, when in reality, if we're going to redefine our own health, it can be very individual, what's called bio-individuality, meaning one person might digest dairy different than another. One person might be able to eat Kentucky Fried Chicken every night and actually be in good health when they go to the doctor. Like, there are certain things that it's just not really explainable. But to define health by those ways, by, how am I creating a life that's sustainable? Can I go to the doctor and get a good report? And, am I healthy spiritually, socially, recreationally? So I think expanding that definition of health, not just to a kind of what we look like or even what we eat to an extent, it's very limiting.
So welcome back, everybody. Hope you enjoyed part 2 of my chat with Tessie. Part 3 coming at you next week. She rounds out her 7-step process for identifying and overcoming those obstacles. And man, this is a deep thing. This is one of those areas of leverage in your life that I think if you can get a handle on your relationship with yourself, with your body, and like I said in the interview, the most intimate relationship you have in your life, which is with the food that you put in your mouth and chew and swallow, I think that's really the foundation for larger transformation. You have to love yourself before you can love and do great things in the world for other people.
And she, by the way, great job, Trev, on the interview so far. What I've heard, it's for anyone who's listening to this, you know, Trevor and I are obviously friends, personal friends with Tessie. This is how she is, like, in life, like, yeah, as positive and bubbly and like energetic and everything that you hear on the podcast. That's like, that is authentic, and love having her on.
Yeah. There's a link to some of her spoken word poetry in the show notes for the last episode, and I may find another link and put it in the show notes for this episode. But yeah, she's awesome, man, and that's like, she's changing the world. We all have, I think, our duty and responsibility to change our little piece of the world, our sphere of influence, and do something transformational with it. And she's found what that looks like for her. And it's been such an honor to watch her discover that and then really exercise her personal power, which is, you know, compassion and service and, you know, art and fitness and all those things combined. All right, picks of the week. So, what is your pick of the week? Something I discovered recently, and I love it. I do it all the time.
Oh, good. I'm glad. Once again, this is just me going with the whole positivity vibe. Like I said, I shared the good newsletter several episodes back. We talked about that. And so this is just a very, very simple thing. We all these days seem to be using Amazon to make purchases. We all seem to be shopping online. Amazon created a sort of subsection of their website called Amazon Smile recently. Very simple. Smile.amazon.com is the website. If you just add that word, smile.amazon.com, before amazon.com, you can select a charity, and then a portion of your qualifying purchases go to a 501c3 nonprofit of your choosing, and they have close to 1 million on there to choose from. And it's a very small, contribution, but I think as this grows and more people use it, it will continue to grow. I mean, I think it just started in like maybe August, and they've already raised like $32 million or something like that. Wow. So, it's anything that we can do to do good in the world, I guess, is what is the idea. And there's so many things like this, but it reminds me of like an affiliate program for, making a big change in the world, if you will. So anyway, smile.amazon.com, very simple.
Awesome. My pick of the week is a book called Platform by a guy named Michael Hyatt. It's a little bit dated at this point. He talks about a lot of technology that is not so mainstream anymore, or he talks about existing technology in a way that kind of shows its age because it was once mainstream and is sort of not so much anymore, or other technologies have popped up to take its place. But this is a book that's all about building a platform for yourself online, a virtual podium for you to sort of stand at and represent yourself as somebody worth listening to. So if you've got a message to share online of any kind, and you want to learn how to leverage technology and blogging and your voice and the way you communicate in a way that will have a more sort of poignant impact, so to speak, check it out. It's a great book that I really, really enjoyed, and it's definitely the kind of book you'll want to own to reference, as you go through your journey. Because there's a chapter in there for just about every aspect of building a platform, whether it's speaking or blogging or podcasting or just being on Twitter or just being a human being walking around on the street outside. A lot of really good stuff in there. Highly recommend it. Platform by Michael Hyatt. And we've got a link to both the book on Amazon, where you can buy a hard copy or a Kindle version. as well as the audiobook on Audible, but I would recommend going with the hard copy just because it's so instructional that you may want to revisit individual chapters and see those instructions and stuff in print. So yeah, Platform by Michael Hyatt. All right, well, I think that does it then, yeah?
Let's get out of here, shall we?
All right.
All right. Today's episode of Inside Acting was produced and co-hosted by yours truly, AJ Meyer, and of course, Trevor Algatt. Jen Levin is our production coordinator. Gadali Gubrick is our marketing and web director. Deborah Smith is our community manager. Trevor Algatt edited and mixed today's episode and composed our theme and interview music. And Fern Lim designed our logo. And we have a special announcement here. Actually, it's sort of a two-pronged announcement related to one another. But our Director of Public Relations, Timothy Patrick Waterman, is moving on to other pastures. And we just wanted to take a moment, pause, reflect, and seriously, sincerely thank him for the work that he's done on the podcast. Timothy was probably the biggest force for positive change in the PR sector and the social media sector of the podcast that we've had in the 6 years that we've been doing it. He absolutely crushed it. Made such a big difference. Was sort of always, making a concerted effort to connect with our listeners and the community, and just did the job with like the most. He's so effective and so. And it's him. It's reflective of his personality. But I was going to say so effective and so nice, like so generous and genuine. And so, personally, and I know I speak for Trevor as well on the podcast, just wanted to say thank you. And if you have anything you want to add, Trev.
Yeah, I'm so grateful for the work that he did. It was really awesome. The guy, hey, Tim, he really, got the podcast, and he, continues to get. He gets the podcast, he gets the culture, he gets what our vibe is, and I was so grateful for the work he did for us. So thank you, Tim. We had a nice long chat about it on the phone last week, so you know how I feel about all the work you do, and I'm really excited for what's next for you. So thank you for your service, and we are now, of course, looking for a new director of public relations. This is somebody who will support us with social media, mostly our Instagram, Twitter, Facebook feeds, things like that, reaching out to other communities online just to make a connection and keep a conversation going, because we're very much about community. And keeping our listeners informed about upcoming episodes, events, things like that. Time commitment is anywhere from probably 45 minutes to 2 hours a week. So it's a pretty minimal time commitment. And you'd be working with a team of people who are just looking to get good stuff out there with the podcast. So there are a few sort of recurring tasks that need to be completed every week that it would be a huge help to have the right person doing this for us. Would be a weird sentence, sorry. But if this sounds like something that would be a good time for you, something you'd be interested in learning more about or taking on, shoot us an email at support@insideacting.net, and that will go straight to the people it needs to go to start the conversation about that. So yeah, looking forward to hearing from people who are interested. You can sign up if you're listening to this and you'd like to hear more from us. Sign up for our weekly email dispatch and listen to all of our episodes at our website, insideacting.net. Also find us on the aforementioned Twitter, Instagrams, YouTubes, Facebooks, SoundClouds, Stitchers, and iTunes. And if you do nothing else, giving us a nice review on iTunes is a great way to support the podcast if you're not ready to support in other ways. It's kind of like just putting a tip in our tip jar, a sort of emotional, spiritual, goodwill tip in our tip jar, and it helps other people discover the show too. So that would be huge if you take a moment to do that. We would love you for a long time.
Special thanks to our sponsors, Rehearsal Pro and VO2GoGo.com, and to you, of course, our listeners. Couldn't do it without you. If you love what we do here, if you love Inside Acting, you want to maximize its value in your life and career, and of course, most importantly, support the continued production of the podcast, you can sign up as a member and which will contribute on a monthly basis to the podcast. But in addition to that, you'll get some cool perks like access to our private member community message board, invite to exclusive member meetups, fun freebies, special bonus content, discount. We gave our members a discount on the Express Headshot Day, and much more. It's only $7 a month. You get a discount if you sign up for a year, or 2 months free rather if you sign up for a year. Just visit insideacting.net and click on the membership tab to get started. You can also, if you don't want to do a recurring monthly thing or a yearly thing, you can make a one-time, no strings attached, tax-deductible donation by visiting insideacting.net/contribute.
And that does it for episode 256 of Inside Acting. Thank you so much for listening. We'll see you next week. And in the meantime, do good in the world.